Good evening and welcome to TWC TV. I am your host, Patrick D. McCoy. On our last episode, we explored the theme of generations. Today, we carried the theme forth through song. This is our song. Together, we sing. Our first guest is Dr. Katherine FitzGibbon. Dr. FitzGibbon is the Director of Choral Activities at Lewis and Clark College. She is our guest conductor for our upcoming virtual sings, which takes place tomorrow. We welcome Dr. FitzGibbon. Kathy, welcome. It's so good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here this week.
Listen, well, you know you get asked the question that everybody is getting asked during this time. How are you doing? I mean, really, how are you doing? Because I know you're director of choral activities at Lewis and Clark College, and you're over residence. I mean, you have a lot going on. So first of all, how are you doing managing this time?
Well, thank you for asking. I'm hanging in there, and you know, as we all are trying to figure out what this all looks like. And with my Lewis and Clark students, I have online rehearsals and trying to keep everybody safe. And with Resonance, we're doing some exciting video projects and learning a lot about that. And then I also have two small children. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and we're homeschooling and have the kids around all the time, which is both the most miraculous thing to have your work life and your personal life, like the boundaries are completely blurred, and also of course that's like total chaos all the time. And but we're hanging in there, and it's kind of lovely. Like my college students are always tickled when my 6-year-old comes and says hi to them and shows off his lost tooth, and and vice versa. My kids are practicing doing their vocal warm-ups all over the house right now, so it's been a fun time.
The reason what I really wanted to talk to you, especially on this platform, is because you've actually been ahead of this current season of including music and things with resonance. And I just want the listeners and the viewers to kind of get a glimpse into this passion of yours. What really inspired you to delve more into the music of marginalized composers of color and women? Talk to a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. It's as you say, it's a real passion of mine, and it's something that with Resonance Ensemble we are allowing to permeate just every aspect of our organization. We have been for about 4 years now, and partly it coincided with the election and the level of overt comments that we were hearing, and partly there were a couple of incidents in the Portland arts community that were really eye-opening for me as a white person, that like, how does this happen still, that people are not cast because of the color of their skin or are written about in a certain way. And it made us all think with Resonance, we just want to devote everything we do to creating a new kind of choral ecosystem that really values and amplifies the voices of historically underrepresented composers and artists, and to think really inclusively and mindfully about who we are hiring as singers, which composers we are commissioning, who we're performing, whose stories are being told. And one of the things as we've continued to learn, and also, sorry, who's on our board, who's the leadership of the organization, really trying to think about it also from a perspective of sort of a shut up and listen kind of idea, that we partner a lot with community partners, nonprofit organizations, and arts organizations that are culturally specific. And I think, the way we try to approach that conversation is to ask questions about, what are the issues that your community or your organization really wants to feel are better understood or better publicized or better funded or whatever the case may be. And so we develop programs in response to those conversations. We commission music in response to those conversations that's telling stories that haven't always been heard on the concert stage. And we also try to leave the audience with a kind of a call to action. So they are engaging with the community partner in our concerts, either if they're performers, certainly on stage, but also, you know, we did a collaboration just this spring, the last thing in early March, right before the pandemic. And we were working on an immigration themed concert, and there's a really wonderful nonprofit here in Portland called Immigration Counseling Services that provides pro bono legal support and legal representation to immigrants here. And so they, you know, they came and they spoke, and they had materials, and they had a call to action of sort of what do they need in the community as far as awareness and as far as funding. And so I like that, because, you know, you can go to a concert and go, wow, that was really beautiful, and I feel moved and inspired, and I don't know what to do with that. Like, how do I then go make a difference based on these ways I've been transformed through art, which of course is our end goal with making art of all kinds. And so that was something that I think we've evolved to include, as sort of this idea of, you know, what can you do afterwards? And that's in our program, that's in the comments that we make, that's again trying to let that permeate everything that we do.
Speaking of voices, talk to the audience about how did this whole collaboration come about? We know that you are going to be our guest conductor for the virtual sing, but could you maybe talk about your relationship with the artistic director of the Washington Chorus, Dr. Eugene Rogers, and how this all came to be?
Oh, sure. So Eugene and I got our master's degrees in choral conducting together a bunch of years ago, now that we're old, you know, and anyway, he and I have been friends ever since. And I love him. He is brilliant and passionate and such an amazing musician. And we've just always, you know, stayed connected, and I think are deep admirers of one another's work. And so I adore him so much. And I was just delighted when he was named as the artistic director of the Washington Chorus, because he is just, you know, one of the amazing artists of our time working in choral music. I'm quite convinced. So Eugene was already someone I knew and connected with so much. And then the other thing that's lovely is that this is a joint collaboration between the Washington Chorus and Berkshire Choral International. And they gave me a kind of an early start when I was in college, and I joined their summer festival team as a college intern, as an apprentice, and then sort of worked my way up and became a faculty member and a conductor with them. And it's just been lovely because they've allowed me to grow into who I am, even though they also kind of knew me when, which is really, really special. And even a lot of the singers in our rehearsal on Monday, they identified themselves in the chat window, and it's a lot of wonderful Berkshire names who some of whom have known me since I was 20. So it's really also special in that respect too.
So what have been some of your personal challenges? I know you just mentioned Monday, but what have been some of your challenges in terms of preparing a choir for such a performance in this medium, in this virtual medium?
Boy, I would say the major challenge right now is just that having a large choir together in the same space is just not something we can do safely, except if we're maybe, you know, outdoors with microphones and monitors. But in any case, we're relying deeply on technology to assist us. And what this means in choir rehearsals, which is kind of surreal, you all may have noticed that when you're on Zoom, there's a little bit of a time lag that happens, and it's sort of different depending on who's on Wi-Fi and who's on Ethernet. And so when you try to experiment, which I sometimes do just for amusement, but with my choirs, of what happens if we all unmute and we all do things at the same time, then what happens is that everybody is like a few seconds off in every direction. So you can hear what pitches people are singing, but it just sounds like garbage. It sounds like cacophony. And it's kind of entertaining, but also doesn't really help to have a rehearsal. But what that means for me as conductor is I can't hear everybody. And so because we have to mute. And so I have to go on my instincts and my experience of well, gosh, I'm pretty sure that this rhythm here is going to be challenging for everyone. So let's take a moment on the rhythm, but I can't actually hear them to know whether in fact they've mastered it. So there's a lot of asking people for self-assessment, give yourself a thumb rating, and I can look at the faces in my regular rehearsals. With this, we did a kind of a webinar on Monday. And so there's a lot that I'm just turning over to the singers to be practicing on their own this week and to be preparing themselves for Friday night. And I got the sense they're so excited and just, they love the music. They are really hungry to do a good job and are practicing a lot. So yeah, so that's great.
Just as we close, we kind of talked about music in a broad sense, but I want to talk specifically about Dr. ADOLPHUS Hailstork, Dr. Rollo Dilworth, and of course, Dr. Bernice Reagon, who is not with us, but her music is going to be featured. Could you by any chance just talk about what personally inspires you to amplify the works of these particular composers for this program?
They are three of my heroes in different ways. And I love their music just deeply, deeply. And I just admire so much what they do with their artistry. So Rollo Dilworth is somebody who is, brilliant in so many ways, but if you've ever seen him work with children, with young people, he is a genius. He knows how to just draw people in and to captivate their imagination and to really get everyone's focused attention on whatever he's working on. And I find that in his music too, that here he's writing this unbelievable work, and incidentally it's only been performed once by the Mendelssohn Club in Philadelphia, who commissioned it, so this is kind of like a virtual second performance, which is really exciting too. But this is these three amazing excerpts from W.E.B. Du Bois's Credo, and it's really powerful. The words are just really intense about what Du Bois believes in. He believes in service, he believes in liberty, and each movement is exploring a different idea through a different style, through jazz, through gospel, through the blues, and it's really a remarkable work. And I have that same sense, just maybe because I know Rollo, that I feel like he is saying, everybody listen to this is really important, and it works. It is so powerful, and it tells these really important ideas and ideals of Du Bois in a very compelling way, and the music is just awesome. So that's a part of what drew me to Rollo's work. ADOLPHUS Hailstork, you and I were talking about too, is a giant in the field. I mean, I just got to meet him and say hi on the Zoom call, and I felt like a stammering, starstruck kid here, because I've sung so many of his pieces and conducted so many of his pieces, and he writes so gorgeously. He has, oh boy, just the kind of this romantic sensibility mixed with just, you get these moments where there's this sort of painful poignancy, and then you get this glorious uplifted kind of texture too. He's just so good at kind of having a sense of the emotional arc of a piece. And with this work that we're doing this week, I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes, which is orchestra and chorus and tenor soloists, and it's all orchestrated so beautifully, but it's got some really difficult ideas in this second movement. This how long are we waiting in the second movement, and then there's this uplifting I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes that comes back, and there's this huge alleluia at the end, and I just want to weep every time. It is just, it's like the hairs on the back of your neck. It's it's all the good arts feelings that we have, and I think why we want to make music and hear music and live music. And anyway, he's just amazing, and I can't say enough great things about him and his music, because everything I've ever done by him, I've felt transformed in some way through singing it or conducting it. So Bernice Johnson Reagon, oh my gosh. Okay, so partly I first came to know her through her work with Sweet Honey in the Rock, which is amazing. And then as I got to know more about her, you know, she's a historian. She also she was a freedom singer in the civil rights era. She worked with the Harambee Singers. I hope I said that right. I actually have only seen it in writing. And she is somebody who has this amazing artistic sensibility and also like an activist soul, and also the scholarly side of her work. She's deeply thoughtful, and her music is amazing. And this work, I remember, I believe, is telling this powerful story of this realization she had of, you know, looking at the experiences her family has had, the experiences her culture has had, and realizing, and even things like hurricanes, and I don't know why they happened, but I will remember it. And I believe, and this idea that even with all of the difficult things that she or her loved ones have experienced, that she can look at that and say, wow, that's what has formed us and shaped us and made us resilient. And I believe that, you know, we are transformed through that. So it's a really amazing piece.
Well, thank you so much. And before you go, we're going to let you and the other people in the audience learn about it through a quiz. Are you up for it?
Oh, I'm up for it. But all of my like schoolgirl like anxiety just came up as you said that. Okay, I'm centering. Yes.
Okay, so they're not hard questions, but we're going to see. So Rollo Dilworth is originally from A, Atlanta, B, Birmingham, C, St. Louis, Missouri, or D, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's so good. It's such a good question. I mean, he's in Philadelphia now. I'm going to go with St. Louis.
Okay, next question. Dr. Hailstork's I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes was composed in 1997 in memory of what composer? A, R. Nathaniel Dett, B, Nadia Boulanger, C, William Grant Still, or D, Undine Smith Moore?
D, Undine Smith Moore.
And I went to Virginia State, so.
Did you? Oh,
that's
so awesome. She's also so amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, yes. And I'm back, yes.
Okay. So our final question is, the theme of today's show is, "This is our song." This theme is similarly quoted in a familiar hymn. Is it 1, The Church in the Wildwood, 2, Rock of Ages, 3, Blessed Assurance, or 4, Amazing Grace?
Oh no. C, Blessed Assurance. Oh yay! I was like, I'm like trying to cycle through. Yeah.
I hope that you all watching and listening got a chance to catch those, especially the fact that he wrote this I will lift up my eyes to the memory of Dr. Undine Smith Moore. So that's amazing. But again, Kathy, Dr. Katherine FitzGibbon, we thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to the virtual sings on tomorrow at 8:00 p.m. And of course, people can go on the Washington Chorus website or Berkshire to find out more information. But thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we have 2 of America's most eminent choral composers. Please welcome Dr. Rollo Dilworth and Dr. ADOLPHUS Hailstork as we talk about their music being featured as a part of the virtual sings. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Fine.
Good. Rollo, Good. Rollo, I'm going to start with you. First of all, it's good to see you again. We kind of briefly touched on the fact, I think I saw you not too long ago in DC, so it's great to see you again. Talk to me a little bit. First of all, I'm going to ask you both this question because it's the question that everybody's been asking. How have you been dealing with COVID-19? I'm sure you've had a lot of different responsibilities and obligations in terms of music that have gotten, turned in all kinds of directions. So Rollo, how have you been adjusting during this time?
Well, thanks for asking. I feel like I'm doing well. I know that we are going through a lot with this pandemic. I know we're going through a lot with social justice issues right now and the intersection of the two. And I really do find that writing music, reflecting on some of the music that I have written in that vein, has been therapeutic for myself, but also hearing from colleagues around the country that some of the music has been therapeutic for them as well. So music has always been a source of healing and for all of us. And I certainly have been listening to the music of others, as well as trying to write some more of my own as part of that therapeutic process.
Now, you know, with social media, you can get a glimpse into everybody during this time. And I had a chance to see a few videos of you in the context of St. Thomas Church in Philadelphia. Could you maybe talk to me how you still are in tune with your church music background and how that informs what you do today in your music?
Sure, thank you. Well, very much of my music is influenced by sacred music, particularly African American spirituals and gospel styles, but I'm also influenced by jazz styles, and we mix all of that together in my church, where I worship. And we've been recording, several of us have been recording music off and on throughout the summer and the fall in order to keep those virtual worship experiences moving forward. So that has certainly been a part of my process over the last 6, 7, 8 months.
Wow, that sounds intriguing. And I also know that you're at Temple, and I just want to make sure before I don't want to misspeak, but you're the chair of the department at Temple?
I was formerly chair of the Music Education and Therapy Department, and now I'm vice dean for the music school and for the School of Theater, Film, and Media Arts. And so I guess I kind of got a promotion, but I'm still very active in music education and in the choral departments. And so wearing those hats keeps me pretty busy.
So right now, how have the students been able to pivot in terms of the virtual instruction, and what's going on at Temple in that regard?
You know, Patrick, students, young people in general, seem to be very resilient. Certainly, they've had their challenges with trying to socially distance themselves and keep masks on. It's hard to keep young people apart, but we have adjusted well to pretty much a 95% online presence, and some of our courses, our instrumental courses, are in person, but students are spread out, and we're taking all the precautions and listening to all the science and research, and they're doing well. They're doing well. We're proud of them, and we continue to use Zoom as a means of keeping everybody connected.
Now, I must say, I am just over the moon to be sharing these grids, these squares, with two eminent composers in the same space. Now, we all had a chance to kind of touch bases before we got started, but Rollo, talk a little bit about ADOLPHUS Hailstork. What was the first piece? I know you had mentioned before that you had experienced one of his work, or several of his works. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, the first piece that I experienced of Dr. Hailstork was back in 1994 in Dallas, Texas. His amazing work, Done Made My Vow, was being performed. I think NAMM was celebrating its 75th anniversary that year, and I was just starting out as a young composer. I had an arrangement that had won the NAMM competition that year, and I just thought, if I can be like this man someday. So I'm still trying, but that was my first encounter with the music of Dr. ADOLPHUS Hailstork, and I continue to listen and be inspired by many of his works.
Dr. Hailstork, what runs through your mind when you are commissioned or you get tapped to write a piece of music for such an occasion? What kind of things do you think about when you get asked to get these commissions and you write a work?
Oh, I say, how can I keep up with Rollo Dilworth? Man, this guy's phenomenal. But it's so good to meet with you again, Rollo, and gee whiz, you look just as young as you did the first time I ever met you. But I'm doing a piece called Tulsa, 1921, in honor of, commemorative of that massacre. And this is the Harlem Chamber Players. And they said they're going to perform it in February and I could deliver it in January. And then they called later and said, no, they want it December 15th. And so I'm working on that. And it's for string orchestra, a mezzo soprano. I'm going to add a percussionist and and a harp, because the harp's there and the percussion, you got to have some thunder power in there if you're dealing with these people who got slaughtered in Tulsa. So I had to think about all of that. They said, how long? I said 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, that's a fairly good sized piece. That's about the length of Done Made My Vow. Not done Made My Vow. I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes. I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes. And so I'm working on it now, and I work at it. I start putting the pressure on myself. The last month I worked on it once a week. October, I worked on it twice a week. November, I'll work on it 3 times a week, because you can't keep on it constantly. You got to give yourself a break. And then hopefully I will be finished by December 1st and be able to put it in their hands by December 15th. We'll see what happens. But I want to work all this out. The scenario of the piece is obvious. We have this blistering attack on these people. And then I wanted to finish it with a song of hope, which my librettist allowed me to do. I used the words of Dr. Herbert Martin, who's a professor emeritus, retired from Dayton University. So that's some of the thinking I'm doing. I think I got a little bit more detail than you wanted, but that's what I'm working on now. And that's only one of many things. I like to work on a lot of things at the same time, so that I refresh my brain away from the one I'm concentrating on, and I'm working on the others intermittently.
Now, Rollo, I do want to go back to you because as a part of the virtual sings, your credo is being featured, and we're going to take a moment now and just listen to a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask you just to kind of unpack it for us. Let's take a listen. Wow, Rollo, that's pretty powerful. So talk to me. I know that in my experience being a Episcopalian, when you think about the credo, you think about that statement, I believe. You say that creed in the service, but you drew your I believe from a different text. Talk to us about that.
Yes, so I decided to set the essay Credo by W.E.B. Du Bois, and it was a turn of the last century. 1904, I think, was its first appearance, and it's a series of I believe statements that are really focused on racial justice and racial equality. And I was really inspired to set this text to music because I did my dissertation on the credo of Margaret Bonds that she wrote in the 1960s, and it was set to this particular text. Her setting is in 7 movements, and it's about 24 minutes long. And my setting is in 3 movements, and it's about half as long. So of course everybody has to sing about twice as fast, I suppose. And so I've always been inspired by many texts that that cause us to really think critically about social justice issues. I've set the text of Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and James Baldwin and others, Paul Laurence Dunbar, but this W.E.B. Du Bois essay, which was probably never intended to be set to music necessarily, because it doesn't, sort of rhythmically flow, as in any sort of lyrical fashion. I just took this challenge and really wanted to find a way to creatively amplify these very powerful words.
Thank you so much. I know that in the clip, I noticed that I love the fact that you had adult voices and children's voices. It was such a unity of sound, and it just sounded like you really captured that with even the texture of the music and the percussion and so forth. So that's definitely powerful. Now, as we kind of close on this thought about your credo, what would you say the role of music is now during this time that we're going, especially now this time that we're going through?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think music and sort of more broadly, all art really gives us the opportunity to not only learn more about ourselves, but learn more about others. And I think this particular piece of music, given the text that I decided to focus upon, I hope will help us all to think more critically about what it means to be a human being, what it means to treat people, no matter who they are, where they come from, with dignity, decency, and respect. And it's a message that I think needed to resonate with not only the adults in the chorus, but also with the children, because of course they are our hope and they are our future. And they often seem to be less judgmental as children than we can sometimes be as adults. So there's a real lesson there, a very powerful lesson in the text. And I hope I've done it justice in terms of trying to use rhythms and harmonies and textures and instrumentation that will amplify those words.
Certainly, thank you. Adolphus Hailstork, Dr. Hailstork, my Southern manners just have me, I have to say, doctor. I just revere you so much, and certainly with you too, Rollo. But Dr. Hailstork, this is another full circle moment for me speaking with you in this way, because when I was at Virginia State, we sang this piece of yours called Look to This Day. I think the original title was called An Exhortation of the Dawn, I think was the original title, but then they it Look to This Day. Right. So I always admire you for that piece, and we sang your setting of crucifixion and certainly other works, but I think the most thrilling experience I had was singing your Shout for Joy. I mean, that piece that is such a tour de force for the organ. And you've been in my mind because I just was actually at an organ recital on Sunday by a friend of the Washington Chorus, Paul Besath, and he played your toccata on Veni Emmanuel.
That's nice.
And it was wonderful to hear that. But I want to talk about your I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes, because that's certainly another Virginia connection. And I kind of hinted on that in our quiz that we had earlier. But could you talk about the genesis of I Will Lift Up Mine Eyes, and I don't want to tell everybody, I want you to tell them, but who you wrote that work in memory of?
Oh, well, it's dedicated to the memory of Undine Smith Moore. And to me, well, to many people, this is one of the great composers, especially of choral music, which you're emphasizing today. And I met her, and we were in an interview together many decades ago. I always admired her and her work. And So the way the piece came about is a young man whose name I've forgotten, unfortunately, walked up to me one day. How about writing a song for me? He's a tenor, and I said, sure, I'll be glad to. So I said, okay, I'll write. I'll set this. He wanted one of the Psalms, so I said, I will lift up mine eyes. Was that 21? And no, I've forgotten. You two guys will figure out the numbers. I get confused. But so I wrote that. But then it turned out they were going to, someone in the area decided, well, let's have a Hailstork concert at a local church, Bank Street Baptist Church. And Carl Harris was in charge. So I said, well, I wanted to, it's kind of historic, has a historical precedent that when they're going to do something like that, well, you got to cap it off with a premiere. So, okay, so we got the choir, we got the organ, let's do it. And I added 2 more movements, Psalm 13, of course, the famous The Lord is my shepherd, and made it a 3-movement cantata, and we used it for that concert to finish that up. So that's how it came about, and I just checked on the date, and it's 1989, so a few years ago. But I never expected it would take off the way it did. Suddenly, the one year, they told me at the Berkshire Music Festival was going to do it after I'd orchestrated. I orchestrated it for Walter Turnbull, by the way. Walter Turnbull asked me to orchestrate it so I could do it with his voice. And I did. And that's how the orchestration version came in. And then they did it at Berkshire Music Festival, and they needed 200 copies. And I used to print out my own copies on my own little copy machine. And I said, that's impossible. And so I asked a publisher if he'd be willing to take it over. Of course, they see dollar signs if they hear 200 copies. So they did, and the rest is history. It's gone on to become a piece that people have liked.
That's amazing. And we're going to take a moment to listen to a little bit of that. I don't want to give it all away, but we're going to take a little bit of listen, and then we'll come back and speak further.
Okay.
That was breathtaking. Now, the thing that really strikes me about this setting is definitely the soloist. I kind of asked you this earlier about the forces, so to speak, but in terms of this particular work, what really inspired you to use a tenor soloist as opposed to like a soprano soloist for this?
The first movement was written for tenor, that song I'm telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided I might as well maintain the tenor soloist throughout all 3 movements. And that worked out really nicely. A lot of tenors of all stripes have used that as their for a graduation recital or just giving a concert with a choir, et cetera, et cetera. I'm so glad I did that. I always just wanted to do it for tenor. It never occurred to me that I could be done for soprano. And then later on, I've had women walk up to me and say, I sang your solo and I will lift up mine eyes. Oh, really? Because, you know, there's certain ways of placing the vowel sounds, et cetera, for men's voices versus doing women's voices. And I had a tenor in mind all the time. And I'm trying to think of, I've never heard it live done by a woman. I think I've heard excerpts done by a woman, but that's okay with me.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank both of you. And as we end our time together, again, I just want to thank Dr. Rollo Dilworth and Dr. ADOLPHUS Hailstork for joining us for this moment. But before you go, I just want to just give you an opportunity, both. I'll come, to each one of you. And if it's anything in particular that you want to share to a young person who may be watching, who have aspirations to be a composer or to pursue this art that we call music. Rollo, I'll start with you.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure being a part of this interview and reconnecting with you and with Dr. Hailstork. I think that, if young people want to be creative in this way as composers, I think it's important to study music theory, to study piano in particular. I think it'll allow you to really work with multiple voices and study instrumentation. Read as much as you can other scores and try to understand what has happened historically with other composers, either all the way back toward the medieval and Renaissance periods, but all the way to the present day. Study scores and learn what has happened and learn how that history can perhaps have some impact on your voice as a composer as you're trying to emerge and begin to get your technique down.
Thank you. Dr. Hailstork?
He just said it all. I told you I'm trying to catch up with Rollo. But I just wrote down, be patient and learn the craft. Both the Euro-American craft and the Afro-American craft. And I think sometimes our young people, especially of people of color, have grown up in a particular environment which isn't broad, and it needs to be broadened. And don't sneer at Beethoven and Mozart and Haydn and those guys. They still have something to teach you. And if we're talking symphonic music and serious choral music, etc., then you have to learn what the masters did. And regardless of the skin color, just learn your material.
Learn your material. That's a powerful word right there. Thank you so much. And I know I said that was the last thing, but I do want to draw your attention, Dr. Hailstork. When I met you in DC, you signed my Shout for Joy. I don't know if you can see, I guess I'm blocking, but if you look over there on the piano, you're right there and it's autographed. So I thank you. And Rollo, again, thank you, Dr. Rollo Dilworth. Thank you, Dr. Hailstork. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of TWC TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of TWC TV. I am your host, Patrick D. McCoy, and we do hope that you will join us tomorrow for our virtual sings. More information can be found on the Washington Chorus website at thewashingtonchorus.org or the Berkshire Choral International website. Again, I'm your host, Patrick D. McCoy, and thank you for watching TWC TV. Have a good evening.